Yeah, good evening.
Good evening, ma'am.
Not so good. The evening is not so good for some people, but it's okay. Yeah, switch on the videos, everyone. Then we'll start. Ashish, Elvina, Grishma, Sana, switch on the video. Two people entered waiting room. Agnes Rodriguez. Who's that? Okay. So where have we reached? We have finished the determinants of operant conditioning. Now we'll start with the key learning processes. That is, we have learned about the classical conditioning. We have learned about operant conditioning. Two types of conditioning or two types of learning. We have already learned about two types of conditioning. Now we'll see what are the main concepts in learning. That is key learning processes. In any learning, let it be classical conditioning or let it be operant conditioning or any other type of learning, these key learning processes takes place. Okay, so we are going to learn about these key learning process. I'll share the screen. Okay, key learning processes. Please note down the names. First one will be something that you're very familiar with. That is, first one is reinforcement. Then the second one would be extinction. Note these down. Reinforcement was the first one. Second is extinction. Then you have generalization. Okay. And then the next one is discrimination. One more we have. That is spontaneous recovery. Spontaneous recovery. These are the main key concepts in the learning process. Okay. Is my video off?
Yes, ma'am.
So now okay. Can you see the screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So these are the main processes: reinforcement, extinction, generalization, discrimination, spontaneous recovery. If I ask you an essay question for explaining the key learning processes, for any learning process, there are these many key processes happening in between. So they are reinforcement, extinction, generalization, discrimination, and spontaneous recovery. Okay. And we'll now see what they are. Reinforcement we already discussed. We just have to discuss two things about it. There are two types of reinforcers. So what is basically reinforcement? Providing a reinforcer. That is reinforcement. The process of administering or giving or providing a reinforcer is known as reinforcement. Take page number 114. You have that there, the definition. Reinforcement is the operation of administering a reinforcer by the experimenter. Okay? Yes. And Reinforcers are stimuli. Mark that sentence also. Reinforcers are stimuli that increase the rate or probability of the responses that precede them. Increase the probability of responses that precede them. So after a response or after a behavior, we give a reinforcer. We provide or administer a reinforcer. That process is known as, what is the process called? The process of administering a reinforcer. What is it known as?
Reinforcement.
Reinforcement. So whenever a behavior or desirable behavior or a good behavior occurs, or if it is a bad behavior, we give punishment. If it is a good behavior, we provide with the reinforcer. We reinforce that behavior or response. And that process is called reinforcement. In this section, we have to learn about two types of reinforcers. One is primary reinforcer. The second one is secondary reinforcer. Okay? Primary reinforcer and secondary reinforcer. Primary and secondary reinforcers. These are not the types of reinforcement, these are types of reinforcers. Okay? What are the types of reinforcements we studied? Amal? What are the two types of reinforcement? Last day I wrote on the board.
Is it positive,
Positive and
negative?
negative. Okay, don't confuse it with that. Reinforcement is the process of providing or administering the reinforcer, and reinforcer is something that increases the probability of our responses. Okay. Reinforcers are of two types, primary and secondary. Reinforcement, that process is of two types, positive and negative. Okay, don't confuse it. So we'll see what primary and secondary reinforcers are. Primary reinforcers, they satisfy all our biological needs. So for example, what can you give for a primary reinforcer? Give me an example. Aishwarya.
We are thirsty, we get water.
Water. So water is a primary reinforcer. And when we are hungry, what do? We eat food. So food is a primary reinforcer. Okay. So primary reinforcers means those things that satisfy our biological needs. For example, food, water, etc. Now, secondary reinforcers are the ones that indirectly satisfies our needs, which means money. Money is a secondary reinforcer because with money we can buy food. That indirectly satisfies our need. No. And with money we can buy a bottle of mineral water. So our hunger is also indirectly satisfied with this money. So secondary reinforcers are the ones that indirectly satisfies our needs. So who will read? Meghna, can you read that paragraph?
Reinforcement is the operation of administering a reinforcer by the experimenter.
Yes.
Reinforcers are stimuli that increase the rate or probability of the responses that precede.
She's not hearing. Okay, read from that bolded parts. The others we have discussed. A primary reinforcer is
A primary reinforcer is biologically important since it determines the organism's survival. Example, food for a hungry organism. A secondary reinforcer is one which has acquired characteristics of the reinforcer because of the organism's experience with the environment.
beyond. Yes.
We frequently use money, praise, traits as reinforcers. They are
Yes.
called
Okay.
secondary reinforcers.
Okay, so in that sentence, we have a secondary reinforcer is one which has acquired characteristics of the reinforcer because of the organism's experience with the environment. So, for a small child, if you show some 1,000 rupees in one hand and his or her favorite chocolate in the other hand, to some 1-year-old baby, which will the baby select?
Chocolate.
Chocolate, because the baby doesn't have much experience with the world. But after experience, if it is you, what will you select? Unless it is your favorite chocolate, what will you select?
Money.
Money, of course, money, because you know that with that money you can indirectly satisfy many of your needs. With $1,000, you can buy so many of this chocolate. You know that because with experience you have learned that you can do this. But the baby doesn't know that. So the secondary reinforcer means indirectly with that secondary reinforcer thing, you can indirectly satisfy your need, your earlier needs. So the secondary reinforcer gets the characteristics or qualities of the primary reinforcer finally, because it can satisfy your need indirectly. Understood? That is the difference between primary and secondary reinforcers. Now, what is the next thing that we have? Extinction. Extinction means, just like the word said, what does extinction mean generally?
When something is not
When something is not present. So, in contrast, what can we say? Or in other terms, what can we say? When something is absent. When something is not present, of course, it is absent. Yes? Okay. So, extinction happens when extinction, we are dealing with the behaviors here. So, extinction of the behavior happens. Extinction of the learning happens. Do you remember the example that I told about cycling? You learn cycling, and after for 2 3 years you don't practice this thing, and finally you forget everything. You forget to uh, paddle the cycle, isn't it? So extinction takes place. Extinction means the absence of this learned behavior, the learned response. Okay, that is basically extinction. When we studied delayed reinforcement, the previous class, what did we discuss? There is resistance to extinction in what type of reinforcement? Turn the page and see. Continuous and partial reinforcement. Remember? Yeah, in partial reinforcement, what happens? There is greater resistance to unmute and tell.
extinction.
Then there is greater resistance to extinction in partial reinforcement than in continuous reinforcement. So that means there are less chances of extinction in partial reinforcement when compared to the continuous reinforcement. So extinction means the absence or the forgetting of the learned response or the learned behavior. Okay. Now I should read that extinction.
Extinction. Extinction means disappearance of a learned response due to the removal of reinforcement from the situation in which the response used to occur. If the occurrence of CSCR is not followed by the US in classical conditioning, or liver pressing is not followed by food pellets in the Skinner box, the learned behavior will gradually be weakened and ultimately disappear. Learning shows resistance to extinction. It means that even though the learned response is now not reinforced, it would continue to occur for some time.
Okay.
However,
Okay. Fine. Enough. So in extinction, in classical conditioning, what is the learned behavior? What does the dog learn finally? It learns a response. What response does it learn? The dog.
salivation
Salivation to what?
to the bell.
The bell. So the learned response or the conditioned response in the dog is salivation to the bell. Okay. So imagine a situation where this man is providing the bell and not providing the food for a very long time. Ivan Pavlov, he rang the bell, provided the food, and then saw the salivation to the bell. Finally, yes or no? So let's imagine that he continues to ring the bell and then see the salivation in the dog. Again, ring the bell and see the salivation in the dog. This happens for a very increased number of times, which means the unconditioned stimulus, which is the food, it is not provided to the dog for the time being. So, do you think after a few tries the dog will come again and salivate for the bell?
No.
No. Why? Because the dog knows that even if he rings the bell, he won't give food. Okay, so the extinction of the learned behavior occurs. The learned behavior, that is the salivation to the bell, get extinct, and the disappearance of this learned behavior occurs. Disappearance of the salivation to the bell occurs. That is known as extinction. So again, in operant conditioning, imagine the rat is pressing the liver. After the operant conditioning, the rat has learned that if he presses the liver, he'll get food pellets. Imagine this rat is not getting the food pellets after a number of trials. Will the rat again go and try to push the press the liver again?
No.
No. Why? Because he is not getting reinforced. The reinforcer is not present there. So extinction happens. There also, the rat will not go and press the liver anymore. Okay? The extinction or the disappearance of a learned behavior or a learned response happens. That is known as extinction. Understood? And resistance to extinction happens more in partial reinforcement. Partial reinforcement, remember, the first time you get good marks, you get gift, and maybe after 2 months or after 2-3 exams only, your parents will again gift you or reward you. Then after the third exam only, the parents will reward you next. Otherwise, you will get used to it. If continuous reinforcement occurs, if for every exam they keep on giving, you don't have much value for it. No, you get used to it. Okay, so their resistance to extinction is less. Resistance to extinction means the probability for extinction is less in partial reinforcement. Understood. That is the concept of extinction. So we have seen reinforcement. That is one of the key learning process. Then we have extinction, which means disappearance of the learned response. Now we have generalization, third one. Note that generalization. Okay, generalization and discrimination, we can see it together because they are just kind of opposite to each other. Generalization, what happens? Let me give you an example. One child, he was playing in the playground. A child of say studying in 5th standard. He was playing in the playground, and what happened is something came flying and it stung him. And then his parents told that it was a honeybee. Okay, and he cried out loud. He had so much of pain, he was suffering. Then his mother took him to the skin doctor, the hospital, all those things happened. And then after this incident, he is very terrified. Okay, and what happens is at night he came home and he saw a mosquito flying in the room. He suddenly got startled, woke up from the bed, and he ran away to the next room. Because he thought that all flying things will come and attack him. Okay, so he generalized the bee with the mosquito. So similar things are generalized. The term itself says generalization, which means the stimulus that has similar characteristics. They are considered to be of a similar category, and these stimuli, they tend to attract our responses in a similar manner. So similar things to similar things, we respond in similar manner. That is generalization. Okay. Any other example you can think of in generalization? Generalization is basically reacting similarly to the similar stimuli. And differentiation, discrimination also I'll explain. It is reacting differently to different stimuli. As simple as that. Discriminate between the two stimulus. So if the child had the quality of or the process of discrimination, then he would actually discriminate or differentiate that this is a honeybee and this is a mosquito. But instead, what did the child do? He generalized it and considered both of them to be of the same category. So he feared that the mosquito will also attack him. Okay, just think of any example, generalization and discrimination. Don't think of insects and all, think of sound, think of the vision, think of other examples.
When the child gets burned by a flame,
Hmm.
then wherever he or she sees the lamps, should be afraid.
Afraid, yes. That is one example of generalization or discrimination.
Generalization.
Generalization, very good. Then, any more examples? That was the visual thing. Then, any sound examples related to sound? Hmm. Yeah.
Whenever we heard our ringtone,
Hmm.
we used to give more response to that.
Hmm.
So it is a kind of similar situation, like it is also a generalization.
Generalization. Okay. So when you hear a similar ringtone somewhere else, you also respond to it. You attend to it. That is also a generalization process. Very good. Any other? Now think of discrimination. In the same example, you can use it for discrimination also. We know that our ringtone has this much length. We have put the ringtone from, if it is a music, if it is a film song, then we have put from the this particular minute to this particular stanza. We know that. So when we hear music somewhere else, the same music, then you will not respond because that is not, you know that it is not your ringtone. So you discriminate between the two. Okay, you know that this particular ringtone has this many beats and musics and rhythms in between, but the other one is more melodious or has more jazz or such things. So you don't respond and run to take the phone. You don't run to take the phone. Okay, that is discrimination. So understood generalization and discrimination? Yeah, basically they are kind of opposite to each other. The one is generalization is reacting similarly to the similar stimuli, and discrimination is differentiating or discriminating between the two. Okay, Ashish understood?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, very good. Now, one more thing about generalization. You have a definition there, page 115. Mark that. This phenomenon of responding similarly, I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12th line. It's given in italics. This phenomenon of responding similarly to similar stimuli is known as generalization. Now, one more thing you have in italics in the towards the last of that paragraph. When a learned response occurs or is elicited by a new stimulus, it is called generalization. What happened, Aishwarya? I can't hear you.
My sister put my grandmother's class down.
Oh my god. Is everything okay there?
I guess so.
Do you want to go and attend to her?
I know she will get from my grandmother.
Oh, very good. Okay, fine. So read that line once more, Elvina. When a learned response.
When a learned response occurs or is elicited by a new stimulus, it is called generalization.
Okay. So I told you, my heart is beating so fast after seeing her expression. Seriously. Okay. Yeah. So I told you in generalization, we respond similarly to similar stimuli. Hmm? Also, just imagine a new stimulus also evokes a similar response. A new stimulus, like let's say, yeah, in the bee example I told you, the honeybee thing. Hmm? The honeybee and mosquito, they belong to the same category. Just they are flying insects. Okay, flying insects. What category is that? Flying insects. Let it be. It's a new category. Flying insects. Okay, they belong to the same category. That's why the child generalized. So to similar stimuli, the child responds similarly. Now imagine there is a remote controlled small aeroplane. And the neighbor of the child was playing with this, and this aeroplane came flying there around this poor child who was already uh, fearful of, I mean, afraid of this flying insects. Okay, and then he ran to the house, shut the door of his room, and sat there because he was again afraid. So a new stimulus came, and to that also this child reacted similarly. Okay, so that is also called generalization. Understood. So in Aishwarya's example, if somebody shows a picture of a flame, let it be a fake flame. You have fake flames in dance and for the background, or we use for the property purpose, no? For property dance and all, we use fake flames. So to that also, that particular child or us or whoever it is, react in the same manner, in a fearful manner. So that is again reacting in a similar way to a new stimulus, which is a fake flame. Okay, so that is also generalization. Understood? That is a point to note there, generalization and discrimination. And the rest is the simple thing only you can read up. This is the concept, generalization and discrimination. Then we have one more thing. Is it time yet? The time to finish the class? Okay. Till what time do we have? 4:20. Okay, 5 more minutes. So next one is spontaneous recovery. Spontaneous recovery. Okay, back to our extinction, back to our cycling example. Hmm? So you have learned, you have been conditioned to cycle. Okay, you have what condition takes place? Operant condition takes place. If you first time you fell down, second time you again tried to not fall down, but still you fell down again. Slowly you learned. Your parents reinforced you, they encouraged you, they praised you. You got positive reinforcements. You got positive punishment also in the form of falling down and hurting your legs and arms and all those things. Finally, you managed to learn it. You managed to learn cycling. And after a few years, you are not able to cycle properly because the behavior is already extinct. The behavior has got extinct. The response or the behavior has disappeared from you. Now, when you're going to try again to cycle after a few days, after these few months, you're trying to again cycle. Your parents have bought you a new cycle, and again you're trying that. So one or two times you may fall again, or one or two times you might lose your balance. After that, what happens? What happens?
We'll get to learn it.
You'll get to learn it. You'll again um, try to ride the cycle in the usual way that you used to do it earlier. That is known as spontaneous recovery. Okay? Spontaneously, there is a recovery that is happening. The recovery of the old behavior, the recovery of the already extinct behavior. Understood? So, in the case of dog, in the case of a classical conditioning, I told you if the bell is continuously ringing, the food is not provided, then what happens? What happens?
Less chance to ring the bell.
No, I'm telling the bell is ringing and the food is not provided for a very long.
Less chance to salivate.
a chance to salivate. And finally, the behavior will get extinct. The dog will no more salivate to the bell. Okay. But after some time, Pavlov is again training the dog. The bell, the food, and the salivation. The bell, the food, and the salivation. Again, this is paired. The bell is paired with the or associated with the food. Again and again, repeated trials happen. Again, one day, spontaneous recovery happens for the dog. That is, the dog again starts to salivate to the bell. Understood? That is known as spontaneous recovery. Now, who will read? Amal, read page 115, spontaneous recovery. 2 more minutes.
Spontaneous recovery.
People have to run. Yeah.
I can read.
Yes.
Spontaneous recovery occurs after a learned response is extinguished.
Yes.
Suppose an organism had learned to make a response for getting reinforcement. Then the response is extinguished and some time lapse. A question now may be asked whether the response is completely extinguished and will not occur if the CS is present.
Presented.
It has been
Demo-
demonstrated that after a lapse of considerable time, the learned or CR recovery and
Covers.
occurred, uh, recovers and occurs to the CS on the duration of the time lapse after the extinction.
Okay. The longer
The longer the duration of the time lapse, the greater is the recovery of learned response. That response occurs spontaneously.
such a recovery occurs spontaneously. Understood? Take the example of the dog and study. So, for a long period of time, this dog is not provided with the food, with the bell. So, what happens? It responds to the bell in a very negative manner. That is, it won't salivate anymore. Finally, after a time lapse, that is after a period of time, what happens is this dog, the Pavlov is again pairing the bell with the food. That is, after ringing the bell, he is giving food to the dog. So again, with repeated pairing, the spontaneous recovery occurs. The recovery of the old learned behavior occurs, which has already been disappeared or extinguished. Understood? Too much in your head, people? Yes, I know it's hectic, but please go through the portions. Okay, so these are the key learning processes. Okay, they are simple topics. You just have to read them up and connect the CS and US with the example that we learned in the experiment. The CS is the bell and US is the food. Wherever you see CS and US, mark food and bell and keep. So it'll be easy for you to read. Okay? Okay. Others, home science people, run. Thank you.
Thank you.
Class.
Thank
Yes.
you, ma'am.
See you in the evening.